Hello there, welcome to Real Tales and Trails, where we entertain you with great and captivating stories. Pleased to have you listen to this podcast. We have awesome and amazing stories for you. So, let's begin.
The Voice in the Walls. Hey, let me tell you a story, one that might keep you up tonight, so make sure you're tucked in tight. You might want to turn on a light or two after this. It's about a woman named Claire. She moved into this old house on the edge of town, a place that had been on the market for months, probably years. No one seemed to want it, but Claire didn't care. She was looking for a fresh start. She'd just gotten out of a bad relationship and needed to be away from everything, to start over in peace. So, when she found this place, it seemed perfect, even though it was a little run down. The house was huge, too big for one person, but that's what she liked about it. She figured she'd have plenty of space for herself, maybe even a home office to work from. It was a quiet neighborhood, no loud neighbors, and the woods were just a short walk away. The kind of place where you could go for days without hearing much except the rustling of trees. But something was off from the start. It wasn't obvious at first. The walls had that musty smell of old houses, but she figured a good cleaning would do the trick. The floorboards creaked, but old houses do that, don't they? She thought nothing of it. But then there was the whisper. It started on the first night, just after she got into bed. She had been reading a book when she heard it, soft at first, almost like the wind. But it wasn't the wind. The sound came from somewhere inside the walls. A low, raspy murmur, as though someone was speaking just beyond the drywall, but too quietly for her to make out the words. Claire thought she was imagining it. She'd been through a lot, after all. A stressful move, a breakup, maybe it was just her mind playing tricks. But as the night wore on, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. She could almost hear it now, though still too faint to understand what it was saying. She tried to ignore it, but the next night, it was there again. And the next. It followed her every time she went to bed. She started to lose sleep. The whisper never stopped, not even when she tried to cover her ears with pillows. And no matter how hard she tried, the noise always seemed to be coming from the walls. Finally, after a few weeks of this, Claire couldn't take it anymore. She called a contractor to check the place out, thinking maybe there were rats in the walls, or some sort of plumbing issue that was causing the strange sounds. The contractor came by, inspected the house, and after a thorough check, he told her there was nothing wrong. No rats, no pipes leaking, no nothing. It was just an old house, he said. But Claire wasn't convinced. That night, as the whispering started again, she decided to do something about it. She grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar from the garage, and she made her way to the living room wall where the sound seemed the loudest. She didn't know what she was hoping to find, but she couldn't ignore it any longer. She needed answers. That night, as the whispering started again, she decided to do something about it. She grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar from the garage, and she made her way to the living room wall where the sound seemed the loudest. She didn't know what she was hoping to find, but she couldn't ignore it any longer. She needed answers. With trembling hands, she pried open the wall, the boards coming loose with a sharp crack. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she ripped away the last piece of drywall, and there behind the wall was something she never expected. It wasn't rats. It wasn't pipes. It was a small, narrow space. And in that space, there was something else. A door. The door was old, covered in grime and dust, its paint chipped and worn. There was no reason for it to be there, tucked behind the walls like some secret waiting to be uncovered. Claire stood frozen for a moment, staring at it, her mind racing. Should she open it? What was behind it? But then, from the darkness beyond the door, the whisper came again, louder this time. Almost like a voice calling her name. Claire. She felt a chill creep down her spine. She didn't want to open that door. She knew deep down that whatever was behind it wasn't something she was meant to find. But curiosity got the better of her. With shaking hands, Claire grabbed the old brass handle and turned it. The door creaked open, and she was met with the smell of mildew and dust. The space beyond was even darker than the hallway outside, and Claire couldn't see a thing. She stepped in, her flashlight trembling in her grasp. There, in the far corner of the room, something glinted. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer. What was it? A mirror. The mirror was old, the edges framed with dark wood, and the glass had a peculiar, foggy sheen to it, as if it had been untouched for decades. But there was something wrong with it. When Claire looked into the mirror, she didn't see her reflection. Instead, she saw a room. A room that wasn't in the house. It was dark, like the room she was standing in, but there was something else, something in the reflection, moving, just out of view. Her pulse quickened. She stepped back, her hand trembling, but the whispering grew louder. She could hear it now, clear as day. It was coming from the mirror itself. Claire. And then, in the reflection, she saw it, a figure, standing just behind her in the room. She spun around, but there was nothing there. Her heart thudded in her chest as she looked back at the mirror. The figure was still there. It was a woman. Her face was pale, hollow, eyes dark and empty. She was smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile that made your blood run cold, the kind that only a ghost could wear. Claire stumbled backward, her mind racing. She turned to run, but as she did, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. The walls seemed to close in, the whispers turning into a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once, all calling her name. She couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were suffocating her, pressing in from all sides. And then, as she fell to her knees, she heard one final voice, loud and clear. Stay. Claire never left the house. The next morning, the neighbors noticed the front door was wide open, but there was no sign of Claire. They called the police, who searched the house for hours, but there was no trace of her. It was as if she had vanished. The only thing left behind was that strange door in the wall, sealed shut once again. Some say they still hear her voice, soft but pleading, whispering from inside the walls at night. Others say if you stand in front of the house and listen closely, you can hear a faint call, Claire, calling for someone to open the door. But no one dares to. So, if you ever find yourself near the edge of town, standing in front of an old house with an empty front door, don't listen for the whispers. Don't look too closely at the walls. And whatever you do, don't open any doors you weren't meant to. You might just find yourself trapped inside.
That was an awesome story. I hope you really enjoyed it and learned a great lesson. Please don't forget to subscribe so you be the first to know when we upload new stories. Please subscribe to Real Tales and Trails at Real Tales and Trails. Thank you and see you in our next story.